This video is sponsored by SquareSpace.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. So a few weeks ago I bought a £400 road bike and I needed quite a bit of work doing, which I let Jim do. So giving it a full service and lots of TLC, and later in the video we'll go for a spin and see how it performs. But first, let's see what Jim has done to it.
So my overall sort of goal with it really was to take it apart, obviously, after the full assessment that you saw in the previous video, and then rebuild it better, faster, which is quite difficult with the Cannondale because it was pretty quick when it arrived. So really what I did was strip it back to the frame, and the main sort of thing from there was a lot of the bits and bobs like this Ultegra here and here and here and there all went in an ultrasonic parts washer, which is a really handy device for getting the gunge out of the pivots and the bits and bobs on these moving parts. So that was invaluable really, just in terms of getting these bits of Ultegra stuff here really shiny again. We put the crankset through as well. That's come up beautifully. It's a real lovely thing, is this crankset. It's a one-piece crankset that you can see. So we have still got a little bit of patination on things. There's a few usage marks, but actually I think that just adds a bit of character. We put the chain through as well, because if you remember from the previous video, the chain wasn't actually worn out, it was just a little bit sorry for itself. So that went through, the cassette went through the ultrasonic cleaner as well, and yep, it's come up pretty well. Again, little bit of rust spotting there, but you know, we're not overly worried. The cassette itself isn't worn, it's actually in very good condition. The next thing I did then was, once I'd got the bike back to the frame, I started to look at the rotating bearings inside it. So we looked at the BB30 down here, which could have been a real disaster. But the good news was the bearings themselves were really smooth, really clean, seated properly, and didn't really appear to be any sort of exhibiting any evidence of noise or wear. So you know what? I didn't disturb them. I felt in that case it was best left alone, because what you got there was an environment that was perfectly happy. So I just gave them a bit of a look and feel, cleaned a little bit around the inside of the BB shell itself, and basically left it to it. We then moved on to the headset. Now this was a little bit more sorry for itself. So you had a bearing in here, and there's a bearing in here. So actually I stripped those out and replaced them with brand new ones in this particular case, because the ones that were in there had what I'd call a little bit of salt damage, which would be consistent with a turbo bike. While the fork was then out, because obviously now we're at the point where we've just got a fork and a frame completely naked, I went to town with the cleaner. So I used isopropyl alcohol, which is a really useful, non-invasive, fairly sort of environmentally friendly cleaner, because it evaporates into the atmosphere to remove a lot of the stickiness and the mess. And we've still got a few bits and bobs of kind of dark marks on here, and if David wants to really go to town in the future, you know, maybe some of this stuff here can be got off with a little bit more work. But certainly I'm quite happy with the amount of time I put into it. The results I got were pretty good, to be fair. It could be better with a polishing product or something like that, but I doubt David wants to pay me to clean his bike too much when he could do that himself. I'm the mechanic. So that was that. We took this carbon seat post out. The seat post clamp itself went through the parts washer as well. We had a look around the inside of the tube, the seat tube in here, just to check that it wasn't burred up or anything else like that, and put some new carbon grip paste in there. And while the seat post was out, I took the clamp off the top, completely dismantled it, because again it was pretty sorry for itself. So the two parts there and there we popped again through the parts washer just briefly, and then I greased the whole system, and you'll notice I've put a little bit in the clamp rail, in the rail clamp there as well, and then put it back together again, because these have a nasty habit of being left to their own devices for years and years, and then they just bond together. So actually getting some anti-seize compound in there was a really good idea. So that was sort of the bulk of the cleaning process. The next really big thing is I completely recabled the bike. Now, initially on my first assessment, I think we thought that some of the cables were going to be okay. But you know what? If you've got your bike back to the bones and you cut in one cable, you may as well cut two. If you cut in two, you may as well double four, quite frankly. And what was really nice is, even though this has got internal cable routing, is just how easy it was to work on. It's a really nice bike to cable up. So kudos to whoever was working at Cannondale about 10 years ago doing their frame design, because actually it was an absolute peach of a thing to cable up. So we've got a whole cluster of new cables here. So new brake inner and outers, new gear inner and outers, all the way through the frame, all the way to the back. And you'll notice I've treated David to some lovely little red cable ferrules there, just to pick up on the colour, because I'm a pro. And we've also got some sexy new bar tape. So the other stuff that was on here, quite frankly, had turned to cheese, so that went straight in the bin. In fact, I was tempted to take it out and give it a Viking funeral and incinerate it in the street, because I think it was a biohazard. It was like something like Resident Evil or something when I took it off. So we've retaped the bars. It's a no-brainer. You know what? It's one of the nicest things you can do to a bike, really. Get 20 quid out of your pocket, put some new bar tape on every day of the week, because that's the thing you hold. And more importantly, the person that had the bike before you, that's the thing they held with their sweaty hands for 10 years or whatever before you had it. So chuck it in the bin and get new stuff. So yeah, so a nice wrap all the way through, plenty of thickness, 3mm bar tape to take some of the sting out of it, because it is quite a stiff bike, and all the way to here. So yeah, looks pretty good. And the last thing, which I think was really important actually while we're talking about the cockpit, is these shifters. But you'll remember from the previous video that I talked about how the internals on both sides were quite heavily furred up. They had some weirdness going on the inside. So in here we had like a weird mix of old Shimano grease and what I felt was like cobwebs and dust and things like that in here. So the shifters, what I didn't do is put them through the parts washer, because I kind of feel that's a bit too harsh for this particular piece of kit. So what I do there is a slightly more sympathetic thing, where I give them a good dunk, but I just basically give them 5 or 10 seconds in a Tupperware container with some warm water, a little bit of cleaner, give them a quick shake just to dislodge anything, so it's not quite so brutal as the parts washer then. Following that then I've re-lubed the internals, and actually they just feel sexy. So that's your new cables plus a clean on the inside, you know, really brings benefits there. So yeah, so they've come out really well actually. So yeah, I suppose the last thing is the tyres. We've now got a set of 25mm GP5000s on, which came out of David's parts bin. Happy days. And that's going to be a massive improvement. Well, anything over those old tyres would be an improvement, quite frankly, because the old ones were just about on the verge of complete disintegration, if I remember. So they've gone in the bin.
Right, Jim, you've done an amazing job. Really impressed with how it's come out.
Yeah.
But most of the work here isn't beyond the home mechanic. And you made a point earlier off camera that buying a second-hand bike like this is quite a good project if you are keen to learn how to work on a bike and service a bike. And
yeah, I think so. It's absolutely within the realms of possibility that someone who's competent and confident and has access to the internet, YouTube account and the Park Tool website and things like that. But what I would say is, firstly, have a go. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a go at this kind of thing yourself. Take your time and give yourself a fighting chance. So if you do want to take on a project bike, buy something with just cables and just rim brakes. So don't buy something with Di2 and hydraulics and lots of carbon and all that kind of stuff where the sort of stakes are much higher and you've kind of got to operate at a higher level. So certainly something that's mechanically simple like this, I mean, even more so if it's got external cable routing, makes a great weekend project bike. So don't be scared, have a go yourself and see how you get on.
it is fun working on a bike, isn't it? And being able to service a bike is a good skill to have.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of reasons why it's a good thing to do, because there's a sustainability aspect to it. If you can purchase a bike cheaply and run it cheaply and maintain it yourself, in a nutshell, think how much petrol you're saving, and think about the environment as well. So there is an aspect, you know, and the self-sufficiency thing I think is really important. So yeah, by all means, crack on and have a go. It's really nice to get to grips with slightly more, it's tempting to say older, but it's not an old bike in the scheme of things. It's a very quick bike, but it's really nice to get my hands on something where it's just mechanical. It just has cables and rim brakes. Do you know what I mean? It's really enjoyable to actually get to grips with that, and it's debatable whether you get the same engagement pleasure from a more modern bike with just clicky, bippy buttons on it. But
yeah, let us know what you think about that down below. I mean, 2016 isn't that old, but the bike world moves at such a fast pace it feels old.
Yeah.
But it's not actually old.
I think we have a skewed perspective on it, quite frankly. I think that
Yeah.
we've got this idea that we've got to be in this race for new technology, but the reality is you could have taken this bike to the Tour de France 10 or 15 years ago and probably put in quite a competent performance on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, things are probably moving a little bit too quick. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this bike whatsoever.
Well,
So,
I think it's time for me to get changed, see how it performs, and you'll join me outside in the countryside somewhere and see what it's all about. Okay, so I've got change into my Castelli outfit and we'll go for a ride right after this message from today's sponsor, SquareSpace. SquareSpace is a platform that makes it easy to create your own website. Whether you need an online store for selling cool bike products, a gallery to show off your bike photos, or you just want to start blogging to share your opinion and views on the world of bike racing, with SquareSpace it couldn't be any simpler. The whole interface makes it a breeze as well. You really don't need any tech skills at all, and take my word for it here. There's a massive library of templates to get you up and running with a slick looking website in minutes. Around the clock support, super powerful analytical tools, and you can plug in your social media networks as well, and loads more. That is just scratching the surface. So if you like the sound of that, you get a free trial right now and 10% off your first purchase by using my special code and link down below in the description. Right, it's nice and sunny, let's go for a ride. It's been a long time since I rode a CAAD 12 back in 2016 when it first launched with disc brakes. And it feels great to be back on it. And it still rides as well as I remember. The CAAD bikes have always had a good reputation, and it's easy to see why, reminded of how good this bike is from riding it today. Some people will tell you the CAAD 10 is the best one ever made. I did try to find one, but their prices are really high right now. And some people will tell you a CAAD 8 made in the USA is the best CAAD ever made. But the CAAD 12, when it launched in 2016, gave us a lighter, stiffer and smoother riding frame. So that makes the CAAD 12 the pick of the bunch. There is of course the CAAD 13, which I have ridden and is arguably a better, smoother bike, but it doesn't have the iconic, classic looks of the CAAD 12, CAAD 10 and the CAAD 8. So the CAAD 12 really is the last of that generation. The horizontal top tube, the non-drop rear stays. It's a classic, an absolute modern classic, and it still rides so well. It's not showing its age at all. And Jim has done an amazing job on the TLC and service. It rides like new. The gears are fantastic. The new tyres definitely help. It rides really nice. I'm not going to lie though, it's definitely a firm ride. You feel a lot more road surface than I'm used to with a carbon bike riding on 28 or 30mm wide tyres. I might try some 28s and see if the frame will take them. These 25s aren't offering a lot of comfort. I run the pressures low, just 5 bar, but it's still a very lively ride. I don't think the wheels help either really, to be honest. They're quite heavy, they're not a good wheel set, and I think a wheel upgrade would improve the looks, speed and hopefully comfort as well. So the ride is firm, you definitely feel more of the tarmac beneath the tyres, but generally on a good bit of road surface it's okay. The comfort is pretty good. It's just when you find a bit of broken tarmac you get a bit more of a jarring impact, a jolt through the handlebars. So a bit more direct in the way it delivers that feedback from the tyres. So not as smooth on a rough road surface as I'm used to with a good carbon bike. But like I say, a wide tyre, maybe some better wheels might help. But my goodness, does it feel alive? Got the same geometry
That's a Super 6 Evo, of course, so really good handling. Nice and fast steering, feels good in the corners. Really put it where you want it to be. Very racy in that way as well. Definitely not a laid back endurance bike. I slam the stem as well, so it's even lower at the front. Quite a narrow handlebar as well, so it's got all the race bike credentials. But the brakes, oh my goodness me, are they rubbish. They sort of slow you down with quite a bit of noise, but not great. But again, I think the rims might be the culprit here. So maybe a better quality wheel set might give a boost in braking performance. But right now, the brakes aren't fantastic. Maybe there's new brake blocks as well. Any recommendations down below from you rim brake fans, do let me know. Get all this performance for 400 quid, absolute bargain. Bargain of the year. Because prices of used second-hand bikes is pretty high right now. CAAD 10s are holding their prices high. Even old CAAD 8s are pricey these days. So find something in this sort of price range and spend a bit of money getting it serviced and some new tyres and bar tape. Yeah, absolute stonking bargain. Really pleased, really happy with it. And shows what you can get if you are prepared to scour the second-hand ads for something that looks a bit scruffy, needs a bit of work, which to be honest you can do yourself. You don't have to use a mechanic like Jim, and get yourself an absolute corker of a bike. So who needs to spend 5, 10 grand on a race bike? Well, maybe I should do a comparison with this bike and a modern expensive super bike and see how they compare. And maybe even put this in a wind tunnel and see how it fares. Let me know if you want to see that by hitting that sub button below. So it's been a lot of fun getting back on board a CAAD 12 after all these years, and it still rides really well. Super impressed with the bike and really pleased with how the project has come along. From finding a second-hand bargain to Jim giving it a full service and riding it today. It's gone really well and really smoothly, I should add as well. But what next? This is definitely just the beginning and not the end of this series. I want to do some rides with the bike, perhaps a nice sporty somewhere fun, maybe a road race. Let me know what you think I should do with it down below. And I also want to look at some possible upgrades, and here I need your input. So if you had this bike, would you keep it original and unmolested as it is now, or would you upgrade it, bling the bike, use the super bike? Maybe some carbon wheels, aero handlebar, maybe even a frame respray. I've never had a frame respray before, so maybe this is a perfect opportunity to scratch that itch. So let me know your thoughts by leaving a comment down below. So a big shout out to Jim for all the work he's put into the bike, and all of you for watching this video and the previous video. And if you missed that previous video, then you watch it by hitting the button right up here. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this by hitting the button just here. But that's all today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon.